evening, everybody, and welcome to the University of Toledo's 2024 Local Candidate Forum. My name is Michael Gonzalez. I'm the director of the Institute of American Constitutional Thought and Leadership here at the university. The Institute is a multidisciplinary center at the university dedicated to teaching and scholarship and public programming in the principles and ideals of the American civic tradition. The restoration of civil discourse is a key part of the Institute's mission, and it's our privilege to be sponsoring this student-organized panel tonight. Before I invite the moderator of tonight's discussion to come forward, I would like to recognize the following student organizations that have put on tonight's event. This forum is a result of collaboration between the College Democrats, the College Republicans, the University of Toledo Student Government, and the Division of Student Affairs. Information about each of these organizations is available in the atrium outside the auditorium, and I encourage each of you to visit their tabling. Let me briefly observe that this collaboration across diverse organizations, parties, and viewpoints is a reason, it provides a reason for hope, I think, in polarized times. Our ability to deliberate together about issues and questions of the day is fundamental to our political order and also to the life of a university and academic freedom. I'm therefore profoundly grateful to the students, the candidates, staff, and faculty involved in this event for making this discussion possible. Tonight's forum will take place in a series of panels. Our moderator will ask questions to which each candidate may respond within a time limit. In lieu of a question and answer period, the candidates will be available to meet members of the audience in front of the stage after the forum. It is now my privilege to invite our moderator, Dr. Chelsea Griffiths, a faculty member in the Department of History, to the podium.
Well, I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. Again, I'm Chelsea Griffiths. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of History, and this kind of thing is right up my alley. And I want to, Michael did a very good job of discussing how these are student-led questions and student-written questions. But I just want to also say again how impressed I am with both the College Democrats and the College Republicans for writing these questions together and being able to talk through their differences in beliefs in ways that really move the university's mission forward and like Michael said, point out the way that discourse should be happening in the country. And I'm really glad that we can all model that today. So let me spend just a moment telling you about the format of today's discussion, and then I'll be happy to introduce our first panel forward. The students have planned a format that is much different from a debate. Pre-selected policy or issue-based questions will be asked of each candidate by me, the moderator. Candidates will have a time limit for their response, which I will let you know. Opponents will be asked the same questions. For example, if two candidates from the same race are present, they're going to be asked the same question. There will be no rebuttal period following. The candidate who will respond first will be determined based on who is sitting on the left, and then subsequent questions will be asked alternatively swapping who answers first each time. All candidates receive the questions prior to the event, and the student groups, again, created the questions together. So I would like to first welcome our first panel forward. They are Representative Michele Grimm, the Democratic candidate for the Ohio House District 43, Wendi Hendricks, Republican candidate for Ohio House District 43, and Dave Blythe, Democrat candidate for the Ohio House District 44. Unfortunately, the last update I got was that Erika White and Josiah Leinbach are not able to be here with us today. You're here, phenomenal. Well, it's good, I'm glad. The last thing I was told was 10 minutes ago, so I'm glad you're here with us. Erika White is also, oh, say that again? Oh, that'll do it, trust me. Erika White, Democratic candidate, Ohio House District 41, is also here. Please come on up, folks. So our first topic is on gerrymandering. In general, across the United States, do you believe that both Democrats and Republicans gerrymander? What is your stance on issue 1, and how will it impact the voters of Ohio? And to remind you, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Wendi Hendricks, and thank you again for having us here. This is awesome. So gerrymandering, issue 1. I feel strongly that we need to keep this issue in the hands of the elected officials. So if issue 1 passes, and I have my notes on this because there's so much to issue 1, and I do encourage everyone to read the whole thing through before making your decision. But it forces the makers to gerrymander based on politics and race, and it eliminates the voter approval safeguards that were overwhelmingly passed in 2015 and 18. So we've already passed this, that we don't want this to happen. In our district, this is an interesting little note, we have 4 districts for State House. And out of those 4, 3 of them lean very heavily to the Democrat side. So we already have issues like this, but it still should be put in the elected officials' hands, not to the public, which if this passes, they're going to elect citizens who are self-governing to make these decisions, which they're not accountable to the constituents that are voting on this. So I feel it should be a no in issue 1. But please look it up and read through the whole thing so you can make your own decision.
Michele Grimm, incumbent state representative for House District 43, which is here. Gerrymandering happens under both parties in different states. We need to get politicians out of the redistricting process entirely, and that's why I'm supporting issue 1. Right now, we're letting politicians choose their voters instead of allowing voters to choose their representatives. It's time to establish an independent redistricting commission led by citizens, not politicians, and require fair maps created through an open and independent process. In Ohio, politicians drew voting district maps that the Ohio Supreme Court ruled were unconstitutional 7 times. They will do anything to stay in power, including lying to voters and manipulating the ballot language. Don't believe them. Issue 1 will end gerrymandering in Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Dave Blythe, the endorsed Democratic candidate for Ohio House District 44. I am urging a yes vote on issue 1. In fact, the district in which I am running is the poster child for gerrymandering. I've taken it around the state. A lot of people have looked at it. Check it out yourself. Go to Dave's, not related to me, Dave's Redistricting, and look at the district. You'll see it's quite sprawling. It extends from Berkey, Ohio, which is west of Sylvania, and finally comes to an end down in Genoa in Ottawa County. It's sprawling. It's huge. In fact, it is illegally gerrymandered because what separates one part of the district from another is the Maumee River. So to stay in my district, I would have to get in one of my kayaks and go downstream to visit my other potential voters. What we see here is one-party rule where basically they get drunk with power. Last year, Matt Huffman, important Republican, said, this is a quote to a reporter, he did not refute it. He said, quote, "We can pretty much do whatever we want." That cannot stand. That is not good governance. And I think that if when issue 1 passes, we're going to end up with districts that look more like Ohioans. We're going to end up with better governance. We're going to end up with greater accountability because gerrymandering ensures an incumbent stays put forever. If we can eliminate gerrymandering, politicians will have to be more responsive to the will of the voters.
Hello, so my name is Erika White. I am running for House District 41, and I am, of course, as a labor candidate and a president of the union, and also for working people. One of the reasons that my stance is vote yes on issue 1 is because when it was passed before by voters, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, it was not carried out, and I ran in those unconstitutional maps. The Ohio Supreme Court voted that the maps were unconstitutional. And anytime a highest court in this state makes a ruling and it can be not followed by politicians, we need to know that there's an issue, correct? And by that, we ran in unconstitutional maps that were already ruled unconstitutional by, again, the Ohio Supreme Court. And then we have new maps again because of that. That is one of the reasons. The second one is we're getting a very important group of people being left out, independent voters. We shouldn't be just talking to independent voters when it comes time to swing. And I have a daughter that is 25, and she's an independent voter, right? And so this is the only time we care. And so when they're putting together that committee, there will be 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 4 independents. Think about that. 5? Oh, 5. Okay. 5 independents. I like more is better. All right. 5 Republicans, 5 independents. That's what we're talking about. That's balance. Because right now, independent voices are not being heard. So we're talking about making sure it's going to be televised on C-SPAN, not hidden in a place where it can't be seen. It's also, there's no secret stuff going on. So that's the difference. That's why you're voting yes. And also, Maureen O'Connor was a part of that process. And she was one of the original Supreme Court justices that was there, a Republican judge. But she didn't use her R or her D. She used what she was supposed to do, what she'd been trained to do and voted to do, was to represent the law by the state of Ohio and what she was supposed to do. When you are a justice, you're not representing by a political party. You're representing the law, unbiasedly, transparently, and according to what is supposed to be by the rule of law. You don't change things. And so that is why I'm saying vote yes on issue 1, and I hope that you will. And again, what it does is represents everyone's voice. Thank you. So I personally, I don't use abortion. I actually talk about health, okay? So it's health care, and that is why, as being an African-American woman and also having a big stance on health care in this community, and I've been doing it for a long time, that when we just talk about abortion, we miss a lot of other facts, and we sound like many other people who get caught on one issue instead of looking at every issue. I'll tell you really shortly, we missed out on adoption. I was adopted, and my mother who adopted me had a DNC. DNC falls under abortion care. And if my mother wasn't able to get her abortion care because she had a miscarriage or she had to prove that she had that miscarriage, I wouldn't have had a loving mother to adopt me. And so to just talk about abortion and about everything else that goes with it, I have a big problem. Also not to talk about the care, a lot of times that as far as many people, especially African-American women, I can only talk about my perspective, that care that goes along with having access to health care. And again, we're talking about getting a chance to have your pap smears done and things that have to do with women's health care, or even after, if you can't have a DNC after a miscarriage, or getting even deeper into that, having autonomy over your body. It's simple as this. Our government has one role, is to make sure that everyone has more rights and having rights, and they make sure that people have access and affordability to health care. And the government can do this. They can walk you down the hallway, they can get you there, they can open the door. But when it comes time for any person to have time to go in the room with their physician, it's time for the government to stand outside the door. And I don't see how anyone that is American in this country and says how much they feel they want personal freedom is okay with the government going into personal places and where they go, especially when it comes to their health care. So just we'll end with this. And the one thing that you were saying, what the reform? Simple reform is this: IVF. IVF is not covered by your insurance, and yet we're telling people who cannot have children. Hold on. So let me get this right. For one reason, we're telling people we want you to have children, and people that can't have children, we're telling them that they can't have children. I mean, it's the oxymoron if you think about it. And I know I'm using oxymoron in the wrong context, but seriously, I've had friends who cannot have children, and now you're telling them, and it costs thousands of dollars, like over $40,000 to have at least one good try to have a child. And now you're telling them under this law that they can't have children. You've got to think about this. We don't take away rights from people. We also don't tell people that they can't have autonomy over their body. A 50-year-old woman, that I have a right to speak up about how we feel about our bodies. Thank you.
So, since I'm running on a platform of freedom, my top line freedom, women's reproductive health care. I was a proud supporter of issue 1 last year. I'm glad it went through. It's common sense. Basically, it's called the Freedom. Hang on, let me get it up here. Reproductive Freedom Amendment was what it was called. I was busy putting up signs and talking to people about it. But the point is, what it does is allow women to take action up until the point of viability. And then after that, there'll be controls based on, viability and stuff like that. But frankly, when we have laws that affect women's reproductive health care rights, when they are told decisions will be made by others, I'm really concerned that we are rendering women chattel of the state, second-class citizens. I just don't buy it. The other side has refused to acknowledge the decision made last November. All of the laws that were on the books after issue 1 passed should have been rendered void. They're not. They have to be forced by court action to have those laws go away. The 24-hour wait-out period, the teledoc. So my question is, what part of the voters have spoken do you not understand? And that takes us back to that gerrymandering thing. One problem I do have, well, among the many problems I have with my opponent, is he made a comment. He talked about the 6-week ban, and he said, that has no exception for rape, incest, or the health of the mother. And he thought that was good because, quote, it gave time to women to, quote, get done with their beer goggles and bad decisions and talk to their doctor. What kind of patronizing, callous, ignorant statement is that? There could be a variety of factors that go into a woman making that decision. And to cheapen that thing by talking about beer goggles, I just don't buy it. By the way, last week, 2 minutes are up? Okay, we'll talk later.
So I believe strongly that private medical decisions about pregnancy and abortion should be made by patients with their doctors, and that politicians shouldn't interfere. I have been an advocate for reproductive rights for over 20 years and worked last year to pass the Reproductive Rights Amendment to the Ohio Constitution. Even though that has passed, there are still numerous state laws, as Dave had mentioned, on the books that make it harder for women to get reproductive health care. These are called TRAP laws, targeted restrictions on abortion providers, and they're designed to shut down clinics by imposing unreasonable and medically unnecessary requirements. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of the Reproductive Care Act, which would repeal all of Ohio's TRAP laws and respect the will of the voters.
Thank you. So Roe versus Wade was brought back to the states, and the states will vote how they want their state to move forward. Our state spoke very loudly during the vote for issue 1 last time, and they want abortion. They want women to have the choice, and I agree with that. I went door to door and talked to Democrats and Republicans, and I will say that probably and independents, and probably 90% of the people I spoke with thought that a woman should have the right to choose. So as a state representative, it's my duty to do what my district is asking and what they're yelling, and that is what they said. However, they also had problems with the length of time that someone should be able to have an abortion. I don't know that I met one person that agreed with full-term abortion. So I guess we have to look at that part, but definitely women's rights are important in all areas, not just abortion. We have to worry about them in sports, making sure that we protect them. And again, IVF is very important. So I would agree with what my district is asking for, and they do want women to have a choice. So that's how I would push forward.
Hold on to the mic. Next topic is higher education. As a state representative, what role would you play in higher ed to support the students, faculty, and staff at the University of Toledo?
So I saw this question come in, and I was like, wow, it's something I didn't think about. It's not part of my campaign messages. I'm really about safety in our city and education in high schools and grade school and so on. So I started diving into this and wanted to know, like, what is going on in the college? What is the students' concern? I saw a lot about parking, especially at UT. So I was like, okay, how can we fix that and make that better? Is there any way we can get people to be bused here and there and have a little trolley going around? I don't know. So I guess as a state representative, I would definitely be looking and listening to what the students are saying, because you're the ones that are here. And they're the ones that really bring in more students by their positive reaction to their experience here at the college. And it's a beautiful campus, by the way, because I got lost and had to keep driving around, and I got to experience a lot of the college campus, and I think it is beautiful. I had a son that came here and a daughter, but that was many years ago, and they loved it, and they had a great experience. As far as how can we get people to come, because I know you're down, your student enrollment is really down, and I was thinking, how do you get more people to come? Well, I know that a lot of students are really, really interested in internships. Those can pay really well, and then jobs after you graduate. And that happens by having more businesses brought to Toledo, businesses that are here and grabbing people from the university. So I think it's really important for state reps to figure out how to get more businesses in the Toledo area, because that will fuel your college. And it's great to have this wonderful college in Toledo. It also helps the rest of the city having all these students here. So I really do want to look at that, and I want to talk more with students and find out what their needs are, and as well as the colleges.
Thank you. So the University of Toledo is in the 43rd House District, so I have thought about the University of Toledo a lot in higher education. I earned my bachelor's and master's degrees from UT, and now I'm proud to represent you all here in the 43rd House District. So I know that rockets get things done, from unleashing the power of solar energy to shaping the future of medicine. Our University of Toledo is leading innovation and shaping the next generation of doers. I visit campus all the time to learn about exciting work being done here and to honor the achievements of our faculty, students, and athletes. And I'm actually coming back on Monday to honor the Mata Lab, the Garcia Mata Lab, because he got a great grant. So I'm coming back to give him a commendation. So I'm standing up for the university in Columbus currently. I'm proud to have delivered more than $19 million for infrastructure projects here at UT in the new state capital budget, and I'm standing up for more state funding for higher education. We need leaders who understand the value of education and will work to make college more affordable for students and families.
Thanks. Michele, you just said something I thought was important, valuing education. You know, the people that lived through the Depression and then fought World War II, they call them the greatest generation. There's a reason for that. When they came back after the war, they had an enlightened viewpoint because they had been around the planet. They'd seen different countries, different cultures. They valued education. I'm old enough to remember, believe it or not, when in the state, probably others, in the state of California, after you had established residency, tuition was free. Free. Think about that. Now, I'm not advocating free. It'd be great if it was free, but I'm not advocating that. My point is, over time, the wrong people are in charge of doling out dollars to education, and they don't value it. One of my daughters graduated with $40,000 in college debt. Not a good way to start out when you're in your 20s, right? That's why it's so hard for people to get ahead. We've got this college debt I'm paying off. I'd like to move into a house. I'd like to do all these things. I just think it's criminal that here in the state of Ohio, we have politicians that are basically saying you're on your own. And I suspect some of it is done because if you have to pay more of your tuition, you'll probably have to borrow it from a bank or something, and that helps out their buddies. Just my paranoia, but I do want to leave you with this. It's a matter of priorities, and if somebody wants to spend more money on education in Ohio, it'll happen if enough legislatures back it. That's the simple solution. Get more money out there.
Again, I'm Erika White, District 41, so I have a list. Let me start here. First, the amount of DEI scholarships that have been lost at this university, both for those that live in this community, and that includes students, black students, students of people of color, women, and also international students. Those scholarships dollars are gone. Bringing that back and allowing people that are already underrepresented in this that wanted to that chose to and wanted to come to this university that now don't have the funds to come here, allowing that to come back because the House bill, I think it was 89, did not pass. Important. And I'll give a shout out to Irene Blue. She's come here several times to talk about that. Also, and there's several families that have not been able to finish their education because they've lost their scholarship or access to funding. Also, the Eberly Center of Women. That center at one time was a way to bring people onto this campus, not a women's center, but the Eberly Center of Women, where we reached out to women and we brought them on campus to know that they were worth being educated and they could be educated. Bringing that back in to invite people on campus, because right now the privatization and selling off of the university has not made it a point where people want to come here because of parking. And because parking has been sold off for the last 40 years, we're talking about price controlling. So there's no way that we can lower the price of parking for students. And my daughter was here during COVID, and I paid for that parking. And when she couldn't come to the university anymore, and then we got all these nice green spaces, everybody says looks nice. It is nice until you have to come and try to find a parking spot in the evening, or then you had to move somewhere and come back, and you try to share your parking pass with, your fiance, and you can't be here within an hour. What is it? You can't park within an hour that the other person left because you can't afford more than one parking pass. Oh, was it 2 hours? 2 minutes, yes. Because the other person has classes. Like these ridiculous rules that hurt students. So, as a state rep, I would like to see those things change. So I'd have to come down here with some students, probably do a little protesting with y'all. I don't have a problem with protesting. And yes, those things that hurt students, and housing is an issue on the campus. And students can talk about that better than me. My daughter can also talk about it. Parking, again, I just talked about that. Taking care of our students. The students at the University of Toledo and UTMC are the #1 commodity. They're why this university exists. They're who we should be making sure this university has parking for, has routes for, has food for, as we're taking care of students and scholarships that they were expecting to be able to have money for. And when we're recruiting from TPS, we don't recruit locally for students. So there are, making sure that. Again, the right to organize, upholding unions and their contractual rights here, and also allowing students the right to protest without having to worry about what is going to happen to them. That is right. Doesn't matter. I don't care what your protest, as long as it's not violent or you're not hurting anyone. I mean, that's the one thing great about being a student. You're finding out who you are outside of being under your parents. And even though I didn't agree with everything my daughter, she was finding out who she was, right? And I like that. You're finding out who you are, and it's okay. You don't have to be me. I want to find out who you are. So that's, again, our professors here, our faculty and our staff being able to move up and not worrying about buddy hires, that they are actually being able to take part in moving up. We have to protect, making sure the most important part, this is a university that represents the city and this area, and we want to make sure that everyone that lives here has access to this university. Because I'm proud of being here, and I'm proud of University of Toledo, I'm part of UTMC. We've got to make sure that we take care of the number one thing that keeps the university going, and that's the students.
Thank you. Hold on to that. One more for you, and 2 minutes. Safety and gun control. Do you believe that there has been a rise in crime in Toledo, Ohio, as a result of Ohio's permitless open carry law? What would you do if elected to office to curb threats and instances of gun violence in the surrounding area?
So we talked about a rise in crime. Actually, we haven't seen nationally this crime has not risen. By statistically, it has not. But has crime risen in the city of Toledo? I think what we've seen actually in the city of Toledo is a rise in violence. And that is a difference. When we talk about domestic violence, and you can see the dockets, you can look what's going on in our court system, and that's when it's reported. And so when I look at violence and the amount of women that are, sorry, it's very hard, the amount of women, including people that I know personally, that have been affected by people that are allowed to open carry and affected by domestic violence through gun violence is traumatic. Also understanding the amount of students, including my nephew who was murdered by gun violence. It is concerning that we are okay with people just being able to open carry. And then there was this incident right here. And I remember they were arresting him at UT at the homecoming game. He said, I didn't know that. I was like, gosh, I didn't know that. You know, so there's things people don't know. So think about it. People are open carrying and they don't even know that they can't, what they're supposed to do when they're open carrying. That's scary. And so, yes, what would I do if elected to curb threats and incidents of gun violence in our surrounding community? We have to make sure that we're holding people accountable. And one thing we've talked about, I work a lot with Students Demand Action and Moms Demand Action, and just having a voice for students. When you talk to students, they want to make sure that then when they're coming to college, where's the college campus, or it's K through 12, kids want to make sure that when we go into school, that they're safe. And so you think, you're thinking of some boogeyman that's coming into school. Oh, sorry, it could be another kid. And I'll make it short. We've really got to make sure that we're doing more to take care of our community to protect against gun violence, because it is something that we can never get used to, never get accustomed to. It's not something we're just living with. It's something we have to start to speak up about and be more vigilant about, and not let other people bully us into believing that it's okay, because it's not okay.
So gun violence, it's a public health issue. And I'm going to try to not bring an emotional component to this part of the discussion, because I feel very strongly about this. And I am really tired of hearing thoughts and prayers. I'm tired of hearing all we need are good guys with a gun. Remember Uvalde? We had hundreds of good guys with a gun, and the massacre of our children continued. Please, I don't want to hear that. The answer is not to arm our teachers. It's not to have children, have drills like they do a fire drill. In fact, I heard a story that I have great confidence is true. A local student comes home from school, tells her mom, I can't wear tennis shoes that have the flashy lights when I run, because that's how the bad guys can find us. That's not the kind of country I want to live in. The problem here in Ohio is that the National Rifle Association has basically bought and paid for the Republican Party. They're absolutely terrified. And despite the fact that both Republicans and Democrats in polling want sensible gun control, they're not going to act on it. What they're sending, the message they're sending out is that if children have to die for me to keep the NRA, supporting me, that's just how it's going to be. I'm totally against it. This thinking that guns are the most important thing. I'm bothered by the fact that my opponent says that the Second Amendment is the most important of the Bill of Rights. Think about it and get back to me later. Thanks.
So the mayor and police chief just had the third quarter numbers, and violent crime is overall down in Toledo for a number of reasons, but research has consistently found that states with permitless open carry laws have higher rates of gun violence than states requiring permits. The Fraternal Order of Police and law enforcement leaders across the state opposed Ohio's permitless carry law because they make our communities less safe and put police officers in potentially dangerous situations. I serve as co-chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus, and in my first term, I have introduced and co-sponsored common sense public safety protections to save lives. I've introduced a bill to keep guns out of the hands of domestic abusers, as well as Extreme Risk Protection Order Act, which, as you would probably know, is red flag laws, which would allow law enforcement or family members to temporarily remove firearms from people who pose an immediate or imminent risk to themselves or others. I've always put public safety ahead of the gun industry's profits and fight for common sense laws to protect our families.
Well, I do believe in the Constitution, and I do believe in the Second Amendment. I also know that states that have really, really strict gun laws are the ones that have the most crime, and that's a fact. If you think of it this way, if we have drugs are against the law. You're not allowed to use drugs. You're not allowed, certain drugs. You can't have heroin, fentanyl, but people still use them. If you take guns away, do you think the bad guys, the criminals, are not going to get them? They're going to do the same thing they do with drugs. So yes, we do have laws in place. We do have things that we have to safeguard. I am endorsed by the Toledo Patrolmen's Association, and I'm endorsed by the Police Commanders of Officers, and we have talked about this in length. I've sat down with them for many meetings and asked them, what do we do with the schools? How can we protect the kids? And there's definitely a way to do that. It's not putting guns in the schools, but we have retired police officers. We have officers that could be at these schools. We don't have to let people in the schools that have guns, and we do have to protect those kids. But taking guns away from people is not going to take guns away from the criminals. So we do have to be careful with those kind of directions. Working with the police to make it safer in Toledo is like super, super important. They tell me they don't have enough police officers, so defunding is not the way to go. If you defund, most of those areas, which would be the high crime areas, won't have police in them, and they need that. So there are things that we can do and help our police officers and command officers to make Toledo safer, and I'm so dedicated to be working on that, and I'm very honored that they chose me to help work with that. And so that will be, when I'm in the State House, probably my first priority, because if we're not safe in our own home, then there's nothing else. Like, we have to have safety. Thank you.
Thank you. We are at our closing statements, and you have 2 minutes to answer the following question. Why should voters select you to be their choice to represent them in the State House?
Well, I am a business owner. I've been a business owner for 27 years. I'm a mother of 4, a grandmother of 2, and I have been around a long time. My business is working with people and helping them achieve their career goals. And I actually, in my industry, which is the entertainment industry, I have the most success stories in the country. So that's really, and when I say success stories, I mean stars and people that are working for a living, doing singing, dancing, acting, and modeling. And I equate that to the hard work that I put into working with someone to see and how they can achieve their goals by the training they need, writing good resumes, finding good jobs for them. So I'm used to listening to what people's needs are and also acting on that and following through. I have a really big passion for Toledo. I was born and raised here, and I raised my children here. I have my business here, again, for 27 years. And I want it to be safe. I want Toledo to feel like it did when I raised my kids, and I could take them to the mall and not worry about their safety. And lately, people are telling me that they're very insecure and they don't feel safe in public areas that they felt before. So we need to get back to that. Toledo's a wonderful place because it is. We have such great resources, and I'm just very passionate about working with the people in Toledo and bringing their voice to the State House, because that's what our job is, and I know I would do a really good job at that. So I hope to get your vote. Wendi Hendricks, District 43. Thanks.
As the incumbent state representative, you should have my vote because I work hard and I get things done. I don't back away from tough fights, and I'll always stand up for Ohioans' fundamental rights. But I'm also reaching across the aisle and working with colleagues from both parties to meet our most serious challenges and to deliver for Toledo. My top priority has been fighting for local jobs and bringing resources back to our community. And I'm proud that my efforts had earned me endorsements from both business and labor unions. Through the bipartisan capital budget, I worked to secure $48.5 million, which is a historic amount, for important projects in Lucas County, including improvements at the University of Toledo, as well as strengthening public safety and human services in our areas and investing in our arts and cultural institutions. Representing our communities in Columbus is a privilege and a responsibility I take extremely seriously. And I'm committed to continuing to fight for us every day and have the opportunity to serve. Again, Michele Grimm, I am the current state representative for House District 43, which you are sitting in right now. Thank you very much.
I'm asking for your vote because I want to prioritize policies and procedures that are going to benefit middle class and working people. I'm not worried about rich people. They always land on their feet. They've got plenty of power and influence. I'm worried about the people and concerned about the people who don't have influence. I want to be their voice, the voice for people who don't have lobbyists, who might not know how to articulate a problem, but they know something's wrong. That's what we need. We need people who are going to be responsive to the voters. Last week, I was on doors talking to good people in Sylvania. At the same time, my opponent was in Columbus attending a rally that was there. The main purpose of the rally was to decry and defeat issue 1 from last November. What part of the majority rules doesn't my opponent understand? Why would he be working against the majority on something like that? I believe in personal freedoms, freedom of reproductive health care, and personal freedoms in terms of how a person presents themselves to the world. And I'm asking you for your vote because I have the enthusiasm, I have the drive, and I have the determination to go to Columbus and make a difference in your lives. Dave Blythe, Ohio House District 44, endorsed Democrat. Thank you.
Erika White, would like to ask for your vote. I am running for House District 41. So if you're in Springfield, Holland, Toledo, over by UTMC, also Maumee. And the reason why I'm asking for that is that I'm a working class person. Like most of you, I started out, I didn't have a degree, but I had to work hard to get there. I just finished my degree, just graduated in August. So I don't believe you have to have a degree. If that's something you want to, that's good. But if it's something that you decide not to, or you change your mind, you should still be able to make a living and take care of you and your family, right? Because we're allowed to change our minds and still make a living, correct? But I've been able to serve on the mental health board, serve on the Healthy Lucas County, and write probably got a health survey and brought back millions of dollars, and that's without ever being elected, right? But I've also, on the other side of that, been able to serve as a union president and a union vice president and negotiate contracts here at the University of Toledo for the workers here that serve the students, also at Lucas County Library, and also in Allen County, and help people have money to feed their families and health care, and to take care of things that are really those items that I can look at and really be really proud of. And so if you ask me why I think you should vote for me, is because we have to have time. We want to make sure that we have some balance that knows both sides, that knows what it's like to sit across from the table for someone and we have this goal to get to, and we're not leaving here until we get it done. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent. When it comes time to fighting for working class people and middle class families and making sure they have enough on the table to feed their families and enough at the end of the work week to do other things they enjoy doing, to go to the movies if that's what they want to do, or to be able to buy a new lawnmower, or to take care of that tire, or like my car that just broke down, I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for that I just bought. I want to make sure that people can do that because we have enough going on in our lives. We have to worry about gun control and how we're going to pay to park at the University of Toledo, or if there's going to be a parking spot when we get there, right? The last thing we want to not be sure of, and we put our hands in our pocket, there's not enough money for us to take care of the things we need to take care of, and that includes health care. So hope to get your vote. I hope to talk to you afterwards. And my name is Erika White, and I'm running for Ohio House District 41. Thank you.
And folks, let's give a round and a thank you for all the candidates. All right, so we are going to move into our second panel, and that is over the candidates for the Court of Common Pleas. So I would like to introduce County Prosecutor Ken Walz, the Democratic candidate, and Jaime Agnew, the Republican candidate. All right, so the same rules are going to apply. 2 minutes for each question, and I'll let you know, please. Yes, please. I took one myself. We are going to begin with our first question. You actually have 3 minutes to answer each question. That's why we have notes. Now, throughout your career working in common pleas court, what is a specific topic or situation that has changed your career or view on life? How did it impact you, and what lesson did you take away from it? We'll begin on the left.
So just for clarity, I'm not the county prosecutor. I'm an assistant county prosecutor. Julia Bates is our elected prosecutor. What event in common pleas has affected me? So I've been practicing law for about 20 years. After I graduated and walked across this stage, as I'm sure Jamie did as well. It was several years into my practice, and I was in a court at the time. I was a defense attorney. And I went into the court, and it was a busy docket, and I had to explain, let me back up. Sometimes when you go into court, you can deal with things in the clerk's office. You don't necessarily have to go in front of the court. You set an appearance, get a new date, get the bond, and then just kind of set it up for later on. Well, there was something I needed, and I had to go into the court for this. So I went into the court, and I gave him the file. And I waited my turn, and this was an evening court. Courtroom was full, a bunch of defendants and attorneys, and they called my case, and I said, well, Your Honor, before you start, I just wanted to let you know that I've already been to the clerk's office, and he says, whoa, 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 whoa. The Supreme Court says I am to arraign the defendant, and so that's what I'm going to do, which was fine. Unfortunately, the next statement was, you, sir, are a potted plant. You stand there. I was so stunned, I said, thank you. Yeah. And of course, later on, you think of the witty retort. But the takeaway from that was that the court didn't realize, number one, that it was insulting. Number two, it looks poorly upon the judiciary. And number three, and perhaps most importantly, my client is now wondering, what the heck is going to happen to me? Simply because somebody had a clever statement to make. It is important that any jurist remember the amazing power that is in the bench, but also the damage that can be done. And so it's that I draw upon to remind myself to stay in my lane and make sure that I'm fair and impartial in that lane.
Do you mind if I stand? I'm a little bit more comfortable if I'm standing up talking. So hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Jaime Agnew, and I'm a candidate for judge in the Lucas County Common Pleas Court. And just to clarify, although we're endorsed by a party, everyone in this room I'm sure already knows this is a nonpartisan election. And so that's important because to just throw out buzzwords like fair and impartial, you truly can't be any of those things if you don't realize that a nonpartisan election is what a judge needs to be, especially at the trial level. We're at the trial level, so we're not deciding social issues. We're deciding the safety of the public and the community. So in thinking about what impacted me, I will tell you that it's also an early story. Judge Jennings is the judge that we are running to replace, although I say that very, very lightly because she's been there for a long time. She's a great judge. She's been there since 2006. When I was starting to practice, I started out in a large firm. I did bankruptcy cases. And then I went on to do my own cases. And part of that process was to take court appointments. And as taking court appointments back when I was doing it 2007, 2008, when I started, I did that all the way up until 2013 and then on to 2018, although I was also working as a public defender at that time. I went into Judge Jennings' courtroom. She's one of the first people that ever gave me an appointed case. And when we were doing those cases, you go into the courtroom. It is, something that is very intimidating. You go in there as a new attorney. You want cases because you want to make money, but you want to be doing the best, presenting yourself well. You're making first impressions not only on the judge, but the public, your client. That can be very intimidating. But I will tell you, knowing that Judge Jennings, what she represents still today, I know why it had an effect on me, because she had complete control of the courtroom. We talk about things in justice called procedural justice, procedural fairness. What that means to me is making sure that when you go into a courtroom, that you understand that justice is being done. People are serious about what's happening, especially at the common pleas level. These are very serious cases. People talk about this being the adult division or the felony division. And when I went into that courtroom, I knew I had to be respectful of not only the judge, but also my client, also the public. I knew that because of how that courtroom was handled. I plan to really follow in the footsteps of Judge Jennings, making sure that the courtroom, that you, every time you walk into my courtroom, you'll know procedural justice, procedural fairness is an important thing, and it's important to everyone. And I will make sure, and as Judge of Common Pleas, that when you walk into my courtroom, hopefully you feel that same thing, and that you're not intimidated by it, but you welcome it, because it's what the community deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, and you can hold on to that for just a minute. And actually, the student's next question kind of deals with your first point. Judges are nonpartisan officials. However, each of you are endorsed by candidates by a specific party. As a judge, how do you deal with separating your own personal views from interpreting or enforcing the law as written?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, I'm going to stand if you don't mind. I believe in the nonpartisan nature of a judicial election. Again, especially at the level that we're at. We're trial court judges. It's very important. I'm open and honest about who endorses me. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Republican Party. They've helped me in many ways, but I will tell you, that's not important. That's not what I lead with. Anybody that's seen my signs out in the community, my signs tell you Jaime Agnew for judge. That's all that's on there, okay? That's all I need you to know about me. If you need to know other things about me, what do we do these days? We Google it, right? So it's on there. You're aware. I'm not hiding anything. But it's important to separate that. Again, I talk about those buzzwords, being fair and impartial. That is so extremely important for our community. I was a magistrate for 5 years. I was appointed in 2018 to the Toledo Municipal Court bench. I served that position from 2018 to 2023. I handled criminal, civil, and traffic matters. And I will tell you, the one thing that I always stood by, anybody that's been into my courtroom, whether it was courtroom 9 doing civil cases or courtroom 4 doing traffic and criminal cases, you would know when you came to me, I pretty much started with a baseline with everybody that came in there. I pretty much knew when you came in front of me, especially, you know, people like to think about the criminal cases, right? That's the fun stuff. The civil stuff's kind of, But when you come in front of me, I have a baseline. I know what I'm pretty much going to do. How is that going to change? By the person that's in front of me. How they change my mind is they talk to me, and it's my job to listen, okay? So if I'm handing out consequences, for example, I'm going to treat everyone with the same, that you're treating them the same. That's what fairness is, right? So you start out with that baseline, and then you listen to the people, what they're telling you, and you see, do they change your mind in any way, for any reason, okay? That is what's important. Fairness is, again, I will say this over and over again, these are not buzzwords. This is what is underlying all these cases, is being fair and impartial, okay? So I will just tell you that is very important in this election and every election, and that's why it's important when you vote that you make sure you research your candidates, you know everything about them, their experience, you know who's backing them, but understand, as law students, you're gonna hear this and you're gonna put this into practice. It is very important that you make sure that you separate yourself from what's happening, because every person that comes into a courtroom, this might be the first time or the most important thing to them, you have to treat them all the same, okay? Thank you.
So it's kind of odd when you go from being an attorney, well, judges are attorneys, but you go from being an attorney and you have a position. You advocate for one side or the other, and then you take the bench and you're in the middle. You're kind of the referee. You make sure the rules are followed. As an attorney for 20 years, I have worked as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, as a civil attorney as well. That perspective of all of those different views helps me understand the role of the jurist, the judge. Now, there are safeguards in place that help judges keep that neutrality. Judges don't just decide things without any help at all. There are statutes that need to be followed. There are precedents, cases either from the same jurisdiction or even a higher jurisdiction that help guide what we're doing. But at the end of the day, it's up to the judge to really silo themselves to make sure that the person does not affect the decisions and the outcomes. And that is a skill that I have honed over 20 years. The impartiality of the judiciary is essential. So the basic question was, yeah, but you're represented by a party. Well, that gives you some idea of the person, but it doesn't give you an idea of what the decisions are that will be made. So while I agree with Jaime that we're nonpartisan, I think that what you can look to, though, are some of the values. And that is where the foundation of that person comes from. And you need to find somebody that you have faith in and you trust in. I do have information on my website as well. Feel free to look at it. And do your research. One of the things that is unfortunate about judicial races is that there really just isn't enough information that people can get on their own sometimes, or even just that they're just not interested. And so it's for that reason that please do the research and understand that having been a prosecutor, having been a defense attorney, having been a civil attorney, that I understand the different sides of that same perspective. In addition, for 7 years, I was a hearing officer with the Ohio Respiratory Care Board, and so I do have experience taking in information, listening to both sides, and making those decisions fairly and impartially. Thank you.
All right, our third question. What is your vision for Common Pleas Court? Are there any changes you would make to the operation or processes?
So yeah, there's a number of things. First of all, access to the court. During COVID, there was a lot of money that came out of the state and federally, which improved the audiovisual systems. Where I was working at the time, we now had television monitors, we had video conferencing, and so we no longer needed to bring people from the jail for arraignments, and pretrials could be held by video. Now, the benefit of that during COVID was community safety, both of the litigants and the court staff. But the other benefit that we got from that was better access to the court system. No longer did people have to necessarily travel. No longer did we have to have cost of transportation for in-custody defendants. And people, it leveled the playing field. So people that had less resources now suddenly had the ability for representation without a higher cost. So, for example, during a pretrial, an attorney may bill by the hour. That's just how the system works. Now imagine that attorney drives there, they wait in the hallway, they get their case called, they talk to parties for a little while, they drive home, they make notes. All of that costs something. Instead, a video call or a telephone call, everything happens a lot quicker. And I can tell you that during COVID, when I was working from my dining room table, that things were functioning a lot quicker and more efficiently. That then reduces the cost and improves access to the court system for people. The other part that I'll touch on just briefly is jury trials. As a prosecutor, I try several cases a year. I've had 2 this month. And the technology that we're using in the courtrooms needs to keep up with what's going on in the community, but also what we're using and bringing into the courtroom. And so what I would like to see in the Lucas County Common Pleas Court is every jury has tablets, so that instead of looking across the room at a screen, maybe they see it, maybe they can't, they'll now have a tablet to be able to better see what's going on, and will also help the visually impaired individuals, so that we no longer worry that jurors can't see something and deprive the juror of that ability for that civic service. Am I out of time?
No, you got 23 seconds.
23
22
seconds.
now.
Well, I'll yield. I've got some other ideas.
All right, so my vision for Common Pleas Court, I will tell you, I don't plan to jump in there and reinvent the wheel. This trial court is a very great functioning court. We have some great judges that are at the Common Pleas level that do great work. It's evident, you can go in there as part of the public and you can watch trials, you can watch what's happening. It's a great court, it really is. We have great courts though that start clear from the juvenile level all the way up to common pleas. What I see as something that may be a little bit lacking that we can always progress for, because we, as judges, as attorneys, whatever we're doing, we can always progress by learning. We got to get out there and learn about what other courts are doing, what other counties are doing, to make sure that we're on par. It might be, you know, all those technological advances might be great. Unfortunately, a lot of that depends on budget. So that's something that has to be considered. What I just think that communication needs to be opened up. Communication is key for everything. And I think that, you know, with as great of judges we have, not only at the common pleas level, but also the municipal and juvenile level, and also in the federal courts that we have right here in our county, we need to maybe talk a little bit more about the people that we see in our courts, because the kids that you see in juvenile court might be the same people you end up seeing in municipal court, and then again in common pleas court. I've worked in all the courts. You know, when I was taking appointments, I was doing appointments through the juvenile division. I was also at the municipal level and the common pleas level. And unfortunately, recidivism is a real thing. You do see a lot of the people that aren't you know, rehabilitated at the juvenile level end up in municipal court and common pleas. I really do think that opening up communication would be key. You get a lot of the courts that have monthly meetings with their judges and their staff, which is great. It's imperative that you do that. But maybe having something, even if it's an annual meeting or a semi-annual meeting, where all the judges come together in our county and talk about things that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, might be something that helps us with the paper process. Because part of what is happening in the courtroom is not just what's happening to the cases, it's what's happening administratively. What kind of reporting is done through the probation department? What are the judges actually seeing when the person is in front of them? Whether that's the motions that are getting filed in a civil or criminal matter, or what are we seeing from the probation department as far as reports when we're issuing consequences? These are all very important things that we could talk about and we could probably progress on if we come together as a team. I've always felt like when you're learning, you know, it's great to be on your own learning sometimes, to read a book, learn things, but being in a group setting, in a team setting, those minds coming together, that's superpower right there. And I think if we get all of our judges in the room, at least annually, semi-annually, we're going to do some great things in this county to help kids that are coming into the system early on to stay away from the system. That might hurt the numbers later on, but we need to worry about safeguarding our community, helping our children, making sure that this community is safe and better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our final question, 3 minutes apiece, why should voters select you as their choice for common pleas judge?
Thank you. So I'm going to tell you, all of us that come through the law school, we have the same education, we learn, you know, the same information, we take the same bar exam, we are all smart enough to do whatever it is that we want to do. Some of you will leave here and maybe you want to be an attorney, maybe you want to be a judge. We can all do that. We all have that capability, okay? You can do whatever it is that you want to do and what you choose to do. And I believe that wholeheartedly, 100%. The things that will, you know, separate that is what is it that you want to do? And, you know, as a judge, why I want to be a judge and why I'm here, what's motivating me is that my life experiences, okay? The education is very important. What we learn about the law is important. And applying those laws to facts, all important. But my life experience has motivated me to do law in general. I started out undergraduate here at UT. I was a biology major. How did I end up in law school? Well, I did take legal custody of my brother when he was 9 years old. I had to go through the legal process myself as a litigant. And I didn't have the money, as students, I didn't have the money to hire counsel. That would have been great. But I had to do my own research and writing in order to file, get custody, and make sure that, my brother had the proper care. So I did that when he was 9. I actually then ended up going on into law school with that motivation behind me. I had a 3-month-old. And then when I took the bar exam, I was then pregnant with my youngest. Everybody has life experiences. You take them. It builds character. It helps you. That's what's helped me, inform my decisions and why I've chosen to run. But we can all do great things. Instead of just talking about myself here at the end, and of course I want your vote. My name is Jaime Agnew. I'd like you to go to agnewforjudge.com. You can read at leisure all my experience, my resume, all that. But I just want to say, for the students that are out there, you can absolutely do anything. UT Law School set me up to do great things. I chose to stay in my community and do those things. But whether you choose to stay here, you go out and do things, take this education that you have here, which was a great education, and go out there. And I love to hear about UT students doing big things, and they're all over the place. So be that person and go out and do big things. Thank you.
I would like your vote. Well, today, tomorrow, the next day, early voting is open by November 5th, of course. So why should you vote for me? A little bit of background. I also, born and raised here in Toledo, and went to school here, Central Catholic High School, and then University of Toledo. I'm a respiratory therapist first, and then while I was working nights, raising babies, I went to law school. I've told you a little bit about my background, prosecutor, defense attorney, civil work. And that's important because it gives me a well-rounded base of experience over the last 20 years. I have been serving this community for nearly 30 years. I want the community to be better than when I found it. And this is how we're going to do that. We are not addressing mental health in the court system adequately enough. Barely at all. Sometimes. We have NGRI, we've got competency, intervention, diversion. Those programs are effective, but it's not enough. In the state of Ohio, the Supreme Court will certify mental health specialized dockets. We need one here in Lucas County. And I think the judges in Lucas County would agree. I've spoken with many of them. I've also spoken with the county commissioners and the Mental Health Recovery Board, as well as City Council, as well as stakeholders in the community, the mental health providers, employers, housing. All of these things come together for mental health. Now, what we would do in a mental health docket is bring these people together, bring in also medically assisted treatment for the individuals that come in through the court system that are there simply because of a mental health issue, who are otherwise good people. Interrupt that cycle of recidivism, provide services. Now, is it perfect? Of course not. Is there going to be relapse? Absolutely. But a mental health specialized docket brings the judge off the bench, we sit at council table, and we talk with the probationers. We make sure that their needs are met. If it's medication, they get it. If it's therapy, they get it. If it's housing. So for the defendant who commits a crime in the winter because they need a place to sleep that's warm, i.e. the jail, we interrupt that cycle. It's a problem with thinking, but it's also a problem with access to resources. By doing that, we make that person's life better, it makes my life better, your life better, and that ripple goes out into the community. We can do that here in Lucas County. It will reduce the cost of confinement, it will reduce recidivism, it will keep people in their homes, in their jobs, with their families. When they are at work, providing a home, the kids have a place that is consistent, they do better in school. This improves the quality of education for everybody that's involved. Simply by taking a different look and a different stance on the issues that we all know exist in the community. Between drugs, poverty, and mental health, we've got a huge problem. We need this program in the Lucas County Common Pleas Court, and I can bring that online here in Lucas County. We have treatment court, we need mental health court. And because we have treatment court already, this is going to be something that we can do. Now, because I've worked in common pleas courts for 20 years, thank you. I'm ready to go on day one. Please vote for me, Ken Walz for judge. Thank you.
And a thank you and a round of applause for our candidates. Thank you very much. All right, and our final panel tonight is for juvenile court. We have with us Amy Stoner, the Democratic candidate, and Judge Rob Jones, the Republican candidate. All right, just like last time, 3 minutes for each question. And we'll pass that to you before I begin. Oh, thank you. Our first student question. In the public eye, judges can be viewed as harsh or as your job is to uphold the law. However, from a magistrate or judge's perspective, you might view your job as a way to help guide others back on the right path in life or make decisions to ensure safety. Throughout your career working in juvenile court, what is a specific topic or situation that has changed your career or view on life? How did it impact you? And what lesson did you take away from it?
All right, so I have a couple of examples. So again, my name is Amy Stoner. I'm a candidate for Lucas County Juvenile Court. What I will say, I've had a number of different roles in my career. I've been a public defender for about 23 years. I've also had a private practice for 22 years, and then I was a magistrate at juvenile court for close to 2 years. So I've had varying experience in my career. What I'm going to give you a couple of examples that have shaped my career. I'll specifically, if any of you are going to be lawyers, you'll become what you call a mandatory reporter, which means if you suspect abuse, neglect, etc. for a child, you're ordered or called upon to report that to Children's Services. If you're also become a doctor, psychologist, counselor, any one of those professional capacities, you need to make a call if you suspect abuse. We're also tasked with doing that for the elder community as well. So this particular instance, I was a guardian ad litem, which is did an independent investigation. The court appointed me to make an investigation regarding the status of a child. The parents were fighting over custody. So I went, one of the things you have to do is you have to go do a home visit. So I went to the home, father's home, where he's living with his girlfriend, and I had to visit with the father and his 4-year-old daughter. So I'm visiting with them, and the father's girlfriend has a 2-month-old child. So as I am visiting there are things that start going off in my head. Something's not right here. I don't know what it is, but something's not right. And the little girl, who's 4, asked for a glass of water. Dad said, fine, got her a glass of water. Now I'll say this table is all glass. He gave her a glass of water in glass. So if you have a 4-year-old, you know you're not giving your child a glass full of liquid. But that wasn't my issue. That wasn't the biggest issue. But he gave the child the water. She took a sip and then set it down on the glass table. But as 4-year-olds do, not their power, but their strength, it wasn't conducive to landing on a glass table. So it made a noise. That child got so upset and said, I'm sorry. And I thought, that's not a normal reaction. So as I sat there and watched this, and then I started worrying because there's also this young baby in the home that is living with this woman and him. Now, he said he's the father to that child. They met when she was 7 months pregnant, so we all know he's not the father. But that's what they're calling each other. So I came back to court that next day. Things were going on, and I said, other things which I'm not going into, I recommended supervised visits for Dad with that child. But I thought something was wrong, so I made a call to Children's Services, and I said, you need to investigate this home. Something's wrong. And I was right, because the agency began their investigation. That was on a Thursday. On a Monday, I got a call from the agency. That infant went to the hospital with 3 broken bones. Now, if you know what force it takes to cause a broken bone in an infant, then you'll know what strength this man did for this infant. We had 2 broken legs and a broken arm. So I was right. So what I learned from that is trust your gut. The other thing I learned as a magistrate in juvenile court is not everything is what it seems. I had another case come before me where we had a... It's been 3 minutes. Shoot. Okay. I'll wrap it up real quick. 15 seconds. In this instance, trust your gut, or I'm sorry, not everything is what it seems. The case came to me because there was a house fire, a child was burned severely, and a woman died in the home. The mother of the child set the fire to the home, but it was presented to me as it was set intentionally. And so the child was in the hospital, and the father did not want the mother to be able to have access to the child. What I found out later was the fire was caused because bed bugs are a big problem in the community. And how they dealt with those was isopropyl alcohol, spraying it on the furniture. The mother was drunk, lit a cigarette, and saw a bed bug hopping, tried to set it on fire, which caused the couch to blow up, which caused the home to blow up, and her mother to pass away. And the child goes to the hospital. So then they come back to me about a month later and say, we're wrong. Mom didn't try to kill the child. Mom, it was an accident. So when it was presented to you originally, it's not what it seems. So you have to take the time when these cases come before you to get all the facts before you make immediate decisions. And that's what I'll do as a juvenile court, look at the entire picture. Thank you.
Just by way of introduction, my legal career began as a prosecutor in Lucas County's juvenile court. Subsequently, I worked for the Lucas County Child Support Enforcement Agency as a trial attorney and staff attorney in Lucas County Juvenile Court. And after that, I was appointed as a magistrate in Lucas County Juvenile Court. And currently, I sit as one of 2 judges in the juvenile court. And as you can see, my entire legal career has been dedicated to the children and families of Lucas County. And I have several situations or incidents in my roles in that court that I think have helped to shape me and impacted me and made me the judge that I am today. But there is something that happened to my family in April of 2023. And I was working as a magistrate in juvenile court, and I had been in that role for about 10 years. And I was told, and I subsequently found out, that a juvenile in Lucas County had murdered my sister. And as I had mentioned, I had been in almost every role in the courtroom as an attorney throughout my career. After that happened to our family, I found myself in a position in the courtroom that I had not been in before and had no familiarity with, and that was the role of victim. And I think that experience is obviously one of the most recent for me, but one that has shaped my approach to these cases significantly. It's really opened my eyes to the needs of victims in these cases. They sit in a specific part of the courtroom. I know now, as I preside over some of these cases where I have victims sitting in that same place that I found myself and my family, I know what's going through their minds. I'm aware of some of the hurt, and I can empathize with the questions that they have and the pain. And it has allowed me as a judge to want to make the focus of our court supporting victims as they go through this process. And I have a unique perspective now on how to do that. I think our court should be focused on, and our justice system, it's not just juvenile court, and you've had a chance to hear from some other judicial candidates here this evening. the focus of our justice system should be on victims, and they should be given an opportunity to voice their questions, their concerns, and for them to be heard. In fact, it's enshrined in the state constitution now through Marcy's Law that allows victims to participate throughout the criminal process. But I think in answer to the question, that is probably the event that has shaped me and my approach to these cases and understanding of what is happening with some of the folks that appear in our courtroom.
So our second question: over the past couple of years, juvenile crime has unfortunately become a common topic in the Toledo area. In multiple cases, youth either had possession of or used firearms. Why do these serious crimes among youth seem to be happening more often? And in terms of society as a whole, how did we get here?
Thank you. I have had an opportunity, again, as I mentioned, I've been working in juvenile court for a long time. And I would agree, I think, with the premise of the question. There's definitely been a change in our society with regards not just to juveniles, but with other people. Obviously, my focus has been on the juvenile realm. And I can tell you that when I started as a magistrate in Lucas County's juvenile court in 2012, having a case come to court that involved a juvenile accused of murder was fairly rare. And in those instances when it happened, the news media would typically show up and obviously provide information to the public about that story. That was 2012. I can tell you that as we sit here this evening, that in our detention center, there are 9 youth charged with murder and either awaiting trial or awaiting transfer to the adult division. So there has been some change, and I have seen it firsthand. The question is how did this come about? The rise in serious juvenile crimes, especially those involving firearms in our community, can be contributed to a combination of social, economic, and cultural factors. And I think that one of the significant reasons for that is trauma and mental health that the youth face, these issues that the youth face in our community. Many juveniles involved in juvenile crime have experienced trauma, whether it's abuse, neglect, or exposure to violence in their homes or neighborhoods. And these untreated mental health issues stemming from these traumas often drive young people toward violent behavior. I think an additional factor, and this will make me sound old, I think social media has a strong impact, not just on our society and our culture, but on young people especially. And I see it every day. Conflicts and disputes can escalate more quickly in the presence of social media. When youth are often pressured into responding to perceived slights or threats or insults, and sometimes they respond with violence. Social media has done a great job also of glamorizing, I think, in some respect, some of the criminal behavior, and it promotes rapid and reactive decision making. And I think that has led to the increase in some of the things that I have seen. How did we get here? I think there are several trends that have converged to create this environment, and I'm not sure when this won't be an answer for everyone, but at least as we're sitting here, I really believe that the pandemic had a traumatic impact, again, on society as a whole, but especially on youth and juveniles. Many adults, and I think the impact of the mental health of adults in our society, the impact of the pandemic on adults' mental health has been well documented. It had, whatever impact it had on adults, it's multiplied for youth. Adults have the ability to seek treatment and address some of the things that affected them. Children really struggle. And additionally, I would again suggest that the rise of, I apologize, I should say, my kids are teens and they have social media. So I understand it's a part of our life. We have to deal with it better. Much of social media is harmful and destructive, and many of the violent cases that I hear in my court have some element of social media. Kids are using social media to set up assaults, and then they record it so they can pass it around on their social media. Kids are using social media to commit thefts, luring people into places where they can then rob them, and sometimes use firearms to do it. Many times what I see are insults about family, friends, or about themselves, and it instigates these violent responses. So I think you can look at some of those factors and figure out this is how we got here. And it's the job of the juvenile court to be able to address those and be aware of them and come up with good solutions that involve linking juveniles to mental health solutions and addressing and understanding that social media is a part of our culture now and be prepared to deal with it.
So one of the things that I have experienced in my career and while I was a magistrate, so let me clarify that. So I was in private practice for 22 years, also with a public defender's office. Then in 2022, I became a magistrate at juvenile court. And in my capacity, I was a magistrate for the docket for the dependency, neglect, abuse docket, which was the children's services cases, but I also did the private custody matters. And then I decided to run for judge, so I had to step down as a magistrate, so I'm back with the public defender's office. So in my capacity as a public defender, I've represented juveniles in both the defendants in both the juvenile court, the municipal court, as well as common police court. So I've done felonies and misdemeanors in all levels in our court system. So specifically as to the juveniles, how did we get here? I think some of it, and I'll jump on what Judge Jones said regarding social media, there's a desensitization as to trauma, as to the negative effects that hardships are on people. We see it, and the lack of empathy is there. So we need to work. That's a societal issue. That's a home issue. Those are things that we need to work on as a society to assist in changing that. One of the things I will also say is at an organizational meeting I went to last week, one of the fathers spoke, and his son has been in a bit of trouble for quite some time. And the position that his son takes, the father doesn't agree with it, but he understands it. The position is, I'd rather be judged by a table of 12 than carried by 6. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And if you don't know what that means, is they'd rather go to trial and have a jury trial and have 12 people decide their fate that what they did was wrong than be dead and carried by 6 of their friends. So what the people in the neighborhood are experiencing is they can't walk from A to B without the threat of crime happening to them or the perceived threat of crime, or I need to settle my differences with a gun. We used to be able to talk to one another, sort things through. I think that has declined the ability to actually communicate and sort out problems. We've turned to name calling, and I think those are issues that, again, need to be worked through. My plan is to work with societal leaders and members, such as this father, as to how can we get to the root of the problem, how can we talk to the people, the youth specifically, to change this mentality, because that, if we start them young, then it'll assist them growing forward and when they become adults in our society. So those are the things that are of concern to me that I think have led to some of this problem and what I've experienced and what we need to do to change some things.
There are many pressing issues facing the younger generation. Some of these issues include mental health, social media or peer pressure, alcohol, and drugs.
In addition, Lucas County Children's Services receives over 5,600 reports of child abuse annually. From the perspective of someone who has spent their life working with children, teenagers, and families impacted by these topics, what impact can students, as the younger generation and future leaders of this country, do to change society to decrease the number of cases involving these topics in the future?
Well, I think some of the things are already happening with our youth, because the one thing with our youth that I've noticed is a lot of them are saying, I'm not okay. I need to work on things. I need to see a counselor. I need to see a therapist. Those are things that we didn't talk about when I was your age. And I'm dating myself as well there. But it's more readily acceptable, and I think that needs to continue. It's going to be a constant struggle with substance abuse, with whether it's alcohol or drugs. That's going to be prevalent, and I think we just need to continue to offer programming, and if we do that through the juvenile court, we can continue to do that. One of the things that I would like to institute is a mental health court, and I think that is something that our society needs and our juveniles need, because to offer them support makes them resilient and helps them navigate the problems they face as adults. One thing I'm going to mention, that Children's Services used to have this commercial out for years that said, be careful who you leave your children with. And I'll leave you another example of things that I think as young people, and I don't know if you have children or not, but what you're going to do, eventually you may. Be careful who you leave your children with. And I don't think everyone, that was kind of a joke years ago, but you don't understand. So I represented a woman, a young mother, who was going to school, working at McDonald's, and had an infant. The father of that child didn't do anything. So he stayed home and took care of the child while she went to work and school. She came home that one particular night. The baby was fussy, seemed really irritable. They didn't do much about it. They went to dinner and the movies, paid by her, of course. And then the next day, she called her mother and said, hey, something's wrong with the baby. So the mother was a nurse, immediately took the child, went to the hospital. That child also had broken bones, but more concerning, became blind because of shaken baby. Now, so be careful who your intimate partners are, and be careful who you leave your children with. Those are things that we need to press on and inform our youth about, because those are things that can impact your life and those of your children from now until eternity. Thank you.
If I can, I would like to just take a moment to applaud the students that came up with the question. It's not often that people acknowledge that there's a problem and then turn around and say, what can we do to help? That's essentially what the question has asked. And so I applaud the students in the room, and obviously the people that helped create the questions with saying, what do we need to do to help with these problems that we've acknowledged and we've been talking about here tonight? So I'm impressed by that, and it gives me hope for the future. I think that what the students that wrote these questions can do to help is start addressing these pressing issues: mental health, social media, peer pressure, alcohol, drugs, and child abuse. And it would require a collective effort from them as the future leaders and in the communities in which they reside and as individuals. I think there are several key actions that they can take to help create a healthier society. First and foremost, I would encourage all of the students that authored the question to become advocates for mental health support. It's been a constant theme throughout our discussions tonight about how mental health is a real challenge in the justice system here in Lucas County and really across the state and country. Promote open conversations about mental health. Reduce stigma around mental health. It's something that can be talked about more openly now than it used to be able to. And I would say advocate for accessible mental health services in schools and communities. Future leaders, the students that authored the questions and the folks, many of whom are in the room tonight, should prioritize funding for mental health programs and integrate emotional education in school curricula. Life's different now for kids, and Different doesn't always mean bad. Different, I think, in this instance is good, and I think reducing the stigma around asking for help or needing assistance with your mental health or potentially substance abuse problems is a positive step, and I would encourage the future leaders of tomorrow that are here to continue that. Additionally, developing and encouraging social media literacy. Again, I understand. It's ubiquitous. Teens today constantly have a device in their hands, and most of the time that is set to some form of social media. Social media is a significant part of young teens' lives. It's crucial and incumbent as parents, but also on future leaders, by example, to teach digital literacy and responsible usage from an early age. I've accepted the fact that I can't stop social media. I can't wave a magic wand and it's gone. I can't do something to eliminate kids and their access to social media. And I understand that there are some benefits, and I don't deny that. I think it's important to develop that social media literacy early. Encourage critical thinking about online content and promote awareness of the impact of social media on mental health and self-esteem, for all the good that comes from social media. And again, as the father of 2 teenage daughters, I'm well aware of the damage that social media can do, especially to young girls and young women with regards to their self-esteem and mental health. I would encourage implementing education programs on the dangers of alcohol and drug abuse. And I would encourage especially the people that ask this question, get involved. Encouraging community involvement and mentorship programs is significant. Kids really do listen to people that are closer to their own age, as opposed to the old guy sitting on the bench telling them that social media is bad. If rolling eyes made a noise, there would oftentimes be a lot of noise in my courtroom. That's just the way it is. And anyone that has teen children can understand that. But I think when they see essentially people that are more familiar, I don't want to call you peers because I think people in law school are mostly beyond some of what we see in juvenile court. But I think if they can see people responsibly using social media and understanding what somebody's feed should look like, that's a help to them. And it's incumbent upon the next generation to make sure, hey kids, you've got this social media, let's use it responsibly and appropriately.
And our final question for the candidates: why should voters select you as their choice for juvenile judge?
That's the question, right? We're all here. Why pick this person as to vote for as juvenile court judge? I've detailed a little bit of my experience. I think it's worth going over. My entire legal career has been devoted to the children and families of Lucas County. And I've heard people in the past suggest, this is my passion. And I never understood what that meant until now. And with my life experiences and my professional experience in juvenile court, I would like to continue to do the good work that I've been privileged to do, and that I'm honored to have been a part of the juvenile justice community for over 20 years, all of it spent in the juvenile court. And I now have detailed a little here tonight about my personal experiences, I think, help shape my judicial philosophy, and part of that is the tragedy that I had mentioned previously involving my sister. It has really opened my eyes with regards to victims in our justice system. It's helped me to understand the people who come into court that have the least knowledge about court typically are the victims. And they are the ones that need the most help in having their voice heard and understanding that they are integral to the justice process and should be central to the justice process and not just an afterthought. And I think my personal experiences as well, I've mentioned it a handful of times here, Born and raised here in Lucas County. I grew up out in Sylvania. I went to public school until high school, went to the Ohio State University for undergrad, and came here at the University of Toledo College of Law and graduated from law school and immediately started my legal career in the juvenile court system. And as a father of teen daughters, I've seen here in our county the challenges that parents face, and I have experience in dealing with some of them. I might be more successful in the courtroom than I am at home, but I think that those things have helped shape me and make me a great candidate to continue as a judge here in Lucas County, and I would humbly ask for your vote.
Likewise, I would also ask for your vote on between now and November 5th for this position. Why I believe that you should vote for me is because of my experience in this capacity in this court. So I immediately, upon passing the bar, opened up a private practice, and my private practice included criminal defense, family law, as well as bankruptcy. So those are the areas that I focused on, and my family law took me to the juvenile court aspect. I did divorce, I did custody, post-divorce matters, and domestic relations, but I did a lot of work in the family law aspect in juvenile court. I represented parents, mothers, fathers. I represented grandparents. I became a guardian ad litem, and so I have been to all the homes in our, not every home, but every economic stature of home in our community. So I know what the families are facing. I understand the concerns that they have. But what also makes me an important choice for this is I've represented parents with children's services issues, and I've been a guardian ad litem for children that have gone through the children's services process. I've represented parents for child support matters, parentage issues, and juveniles in the delinquency matter. So our juvenile court consists of the civil end and the criminal end. Why it's important that I detailed all of that to you, as well as my public defender experience, means that I have extensive experience in both the juvenile court as well the delinquency side and the civil side. With that information and my prior magistrate experience makes me uniquely qualified to handle all matters that become before this court and make me an asset to this community. I've worked tirelessly for the families and children of Lucas County my entire career, which at this point is almost 25 years, it's 24 years. I have worked hard for our juveniles, I've worked hard for our families, and I intend to continue that once elected on the bench, to work for the families that come before me and to work for the juveniles in whatever capacity that they come, and I'll address appropriately all persons that come before me. And likewise, I am also a local resident. I grew up in Holland. I attended Central Catholic High School. I did go away to college. I went to the University of Dayton. I came back for law school, graduated from the University of Toledo College of Law, and then stayed here and dedicated my career to Lucas County, and would like to continue in that capacity, but just another role. Thank you.
And thank you and applause for our final panel.